What's up guys, I'm Nico of CamCrunch, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing the Fuji X100s. Now I know that this isn't the newest camera out there, but it's received a lot of hype, and when Fuji announced this black version, which I think looks really nice, I decided to pick it up to see if it could act as my sort of all-purpose camera, everyday camera, just take everywhere with me camera. Because prior to this, I was actually using my iPhone and a Voigtlander Bessa R2A with my 35mm Leica lens as my daily driver. Of course, the iPhone was sort of a snapshot camera, and then the Bessa, it's a nice camera, but it shoots in film. So you get the nice things about film, the nice characteristics, but you also do not get the benefits that you get with digital technology with that camera. So I decided to pick this one up. It uses a 23mm lens, which is a 35mm equivalent, so I thought it might match nicely. It also has the optical viewfinder, so that's something that interested me. Now, rather than naming all of the specs of this camera in this video, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to just talk about the features that I like about this camera and the features that maybe can be improved in the next version of this camera. I want to show both sides because I don't want to be too biased, because some of you who are watching this might actually consider picking this camera up, and so you might want to know all the good things as well as all of the things that aren't so strong with this camera. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. Now, the first positive of this camera that I have to mention is the image quality. And the image quality of Fuji cameras has never been a problem. They've always been really good with their sensors, even back to the digital days where they used to sort of buy Nikon DSLRs and then put their own sensors on them, like the Fuji S5. They were really good. They had very, very nice sensors, and that carried through to their mirrorless cameras and their mirrorless compact cameras as well. This uses the X-Trans 2 sensor, and the X-Trans technology is kind of unique because it doesn't use the traditional Bayer pattern that a normal sensor would. And instead, it uses a different pattern which reduces moire even without an anti-aliasing filter, which makes the image really sharp. Now, if you guys don't care about the technical mumbo jumbo, just know that these cameras, these Fuji cameras, produce outstanding images. That 16 megapixel X-Trans sensor coupled with this 23mm Fujinon lens, f2 lens, makes outstanding images. So you won't have a problem with images that come out of this camera. The second positive side of this camera is the build quality, the feel, the handling, and all that stuff. And again, that's something that Fuji has never had a problem with. Ever since their Fuji X100, the first version, they've done things really, really well, and they've only improved ever since. So this is a very similar design to the Fuji X100, but you can tell that they've moved some buttons a bit. They've changed some things to make the user experience a lot better. Small things like making this exposure compensation dial a little bit tighter are how you know that Fuji pays good attention to detail when they're making their cameras. In addition to this, they've sort of brought back the physical dials in cameras. A lot of cameras these days are using physical dials on their cameras, like the Nikon DF and other cameras, and I think Fuji was one of the first ones to really bring that back. They put the physical aperture dial on this camera, which is nice to use. They have the shutter speed dial, of course. Instead of your traditional mode dial that you usually get, you have a nice exposure compensation dial. And everything just feels really good, really nice to hold. And when you have a camera like this where they really focus on the basics, you get a camera that you really want to use, a really inspiring camera, a camera that's nice to take around with you. Even if you're not necessarily going to shoot a lot, when you get a camera like this, you want to pick it up and you want to bring it wherever you go. Some other cool features are the hybrid EVF, OVF, which you all know from the Fuji X100, the first version. You get the optical viewfinder, which you can see through, and then you can use this switch right here to make that an EVF, which is nice and detailed, but it's still a little bit laggy. I believe the XT1, the newer XT1, fixed the lagginess issue, the refresh rate. So that's something to look forward to the next version of this camera. Another cool feature about this camera is that it uses a leaf shutter. So the shutter is built in right into the lens. And with this camera particularly, you get a nice, smooth, quiet sound when you're taking an image. And when you think of a quiet camera, it used to be Leica, quiet Leica cloth shutter. But this is nearly dead silent. In a completely quiet room, you can hear it slightly. But when you're outdoors, when you're out in the real world, you can't hear it at all. Another cool thing about that, the leaf shutter, is that you can sync your flash up to really high shutter speeds, and it works just fine if you're using a cable, or I guess if you're using the built-in flash. When you're using an off-camera flash trigger, it doesn't sync as high, but when I'm using my Yongnuo triggers on this, which are rated for 2/50th of a second, I can get up to 500th of a second, no problem, and use those flash triggers, no problem. One cool thing that you can use in conjunction with the lens and the flash, I guess, is the built-in ND filter. So you can have your ND filter switched on and off, and what it will do is it will reduce the light by 3 stops, which is very nice when you're outdoors and you're shooting at f2, because for some reason, because of the leaf shutter mechanism, when you're shooting at f2, you can't use the maximum shutter speed just because of the physical limitations of the camera itself and the leaf shutter, but you can use that ND filter to reduce the light. But what's more impressive is that when you use the ND filter in conjunction with the leaf shutter, when you're shooting with flash, you can really drop the ambient light and you can really make that flash shine. You can do a lot more stuff than you could normally do without the ND filter and without the leaf shutter when you're shooting with flash. So if you're shooting with flash, this is a cool camera to have. I haven't been shooting too much flash with this because I've been shooting less and less flash lately, but I've still tried it and it's been pretty good. It works really well. Now there are areas where this camera can be improved on, and some of these are nitpicky because you always want a really nice camera when you're spending this much money for a camera. But some of these are just they shouldn't be there. So let's just go through them one by one. So I'll start off with the nitpicky ones because I'll just get those out of the way because some of you might not even care about those. The EVF is still a little bit laggy. I know that with the XT1, the newer XT1, they've sort of fixed the lagginess and they're probably producing one of the best EVFs out there. But with this camera itself, it's nice and detailed, but the frame rate drops when you're panning, and the frame rate also drops when you're in lower light. So that's just something to note. And with this camera, the EVF is a lot more accurate than the OVF, so I do tend to find myself using the EVF a lot more now. So it's a bummer that it's a little bit laggy, but that's something I can deal with. It's not so bad. The second nitpicky thing is that the battery life isn't that good. Now I know it's good enough for a lot of people. I get somewhere between 350 to 450 shots on a single battery, but one of the problems is that sometimes the battery indicator isn't that accurate. So sometimes you're in full battery power on the indicator and then it suddenly drops to red for some reason. I haven't really had a problem with that too much because I learned from the Fuji X1 that you do need to carry a spare, at least one spare with you so that you can change just in case that happens. But for those of you that are really don't like to have to change batteries, that's something to take a note at. Now the last nitpicky thing is this tripod mount right here. It's probably built so that it's in the center of the gravity of the camera, but when you're using something like a black rabbit strap or you're using it on an actual tripod, you can't open the door because it blocks the door. You can't change the batteries or you can't change the SD cards without having to remove your quick release or your black rabbit strap. When it comes to autofocus, this also isn't the fastest, but I've actually gotten very used to it, and I did bring this to the aquarium the other day, which is a very low light place, and I actually really liked using it. It wasn't too big of a problem. And as I use this camera more and more, these little quirks that it has, it sort of makes me enjoy the camera for some reason. I really can't explain it. I usually get annoyed by those little things, but it really makes shooting a unique experience and an enjoyable one at that. I really enjoyed using this in the aquarium with lower light. I didn't have a problem with focusing, which is very good. So that's it, guys. This is a very nice camera overall, and this is a camera that I think I'll be keeping. When I first bought this, I already went into the situation knowing that this might not be the camera for me. And when I first got it, I did like it, but I was thinking that, maybe I could get something that fits me more. But over time, after using this for a few weeks now, I think I've had it for a month, the more I use it, the more I really enjoy shooting with this. So now I want to answer the question of whether or not you should pick up this camera. If you are planning to pick up this camera to replace a whole DSLR kit, I don't know if you should do that. I think you should get it to supplement a DSLR kit because it's not going to replace everything that you need. If you need like a whole bunch of focal lengths and not just 35mm, then you'll need that DSLR kit. If you want blazing fast autofocus, this is not going to give it to you. This gives you a unique shooting experience with, of course, awesome image quality, but of course it does have its limitations, and that's something to note. Overall, this is a very nice camera, very fun to shoot with. Not for everyone, but for those of you that are willing to take the time to get to know this camera, you will really enjoy shooting with this camera. I hope this review wasn't too long, and I hope you guys appreciate the info and the experience that I've shared with you guys. If you guys are planning to pick this up, I do have links down below. And if you enjoyed this video, definitely consider liking it, favoriting, subscribing if you haven't yet. Follow me in the social links down below, and I'll see you guys next time.